So now that I've done my Eastern Conference standings predictions, let's do one for the Western Conference. One thing that really jumped out to me while putting together the Western Conference standings was how much more weak it is than the East. I mean, my goodness, a team that finishes 8th out West is, or at least I have them anyways, projected to have a lot less points than the team that finishes 8th out East. But coming in at first in the Western Conference, a team that by no means is weak, one that is very strong, is the Colorado Avalanche. I have them finishing with 115 points, so I do have them finishing ahead of the Tampa Bay Lightning out East. Tampa, as you know, I had them finishing with 108 points, so therefore the Colorado Avalanche, I predict, will win the President's Trophy this year. Avs, I like that they brought in Darcy Kuemper. What a great trade by Joe Sakic to bring him in to replace Philip Grubauer, who, as we know, was taken by the Seattle Kraken in the expansion draft. Second in the West, I have the Vegas Golden Knights with 108 points. Vegas will run away with the Pacific Division in my prediction. I don't even think it's going to be close at all. They definitely should be able to do that. That should be the expectation for them. They made a really good trade, one that I think they definitely won, bringing in Evgeny Dadonov, who had a disappointing year in Ottawa last year. But you get Dadonov for Nick Holden and a third-round pick. That's a pretty good trade for Vegas. He should help their power play. And for the Golden Knights, it's not about what they can do in the regular season. I think we all know they're going to be a playoff team without a doubt. I think we pretty much know they're going to win the Pacific Division without a doubt as well. It's what can they do in the playoffs. At third, I have the Winnipeg Jets winning the Central Division and finally living up to their full potential and getting 102 points. And I say finally living up to their potential because for me, the last few years, the Winnipeg Jets have been a team that's underachieved in my opinion. Yes, I know they had that mass exodus on defense after the 18-19 season where they lost guys like Byfuglien, Tyler Myers, Jacob Trouba. But still, with the group of forwards they have, I think they should be a much better team than what they've shown. Fourth in the Western Conference, I have the Vancouver Canucks finishing with 98 points. Vancouver, we know that they brought in Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland, most notably. That complements their great players that they already have. Ekman-Larsson, if he can find his game, like I've said before, that would be great news for the Canucks. Connor Garland, he supplements that top six a little bit better. Garland supplements their offense a little bit better than what they've had in the past. As we all know, the Canucks, they've had some good players now for the last few years, but they've kind of lacked some offensive depth, and I think Garland's definitely going to help with that. Fifth in the West, I have the Chicago Blackhawks with 95 points. Chicago, I really like what they've done this offseason. I like that they brought in Seth Jones. I don't really like that they paid him $9 million, but nonetheless, Seth Jones, a great player, and he's going to do great things for the Hawks, I think, this year. They have their captain, Jonathan Toews, back. Patrick Kane, I don't think he's going to slow down. Kirby Dach, I think he can take the next step. Dylan Strome even too, maybe he can take another step for the Hawks as well. And Chicago will finally be back in the playoffs after being out the last 4 years. Number 6, I have the Edmonton Oilers with 93 points, and as far as my predictions go anyways, 93 points would not get you into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but I could really see it shaking out this way. The West, the last few years, has been way weaker than the Eastern Conference. Before it was the other way around. If you look back in the early 2010s and stuff like that, it was the West who was the better conference. Now it's definitely the East. The reason why I think that is because the East has really adopted a speed and skill game, whereas the West is maybe still kind of hanging on to that physical brand of hockey. Maybe they're a bit of a slower conference. I think they are coming around. You see some teams that are producing more speed and getting guys that can skate. Colorado, though, they're definitely an Eastern Conference team playing in the Western Conference, in my opinion, with the way they've built their team. Back to the Edmonton Oilers. Yes, when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, you should be a playoff team. They added some guys this year. I mean, they added Duncan Keith, obviously, we know. Cody Ceci, who is a very polarizing figure on any team he plays for, it seems like. I don't really like some of the moves they made. I had to put Edmonton in, though, just because the Western Conference is very weak. And you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, like I said, you should be a playoff team. But with that being said, I don't really know if they're going to do much in the playoffs again this year. At 7, I have the St. Louis Blues finishing with 92 points. And the Blues are an interesting team for me because some people are predicting them to not even make the playoffs. I have to disagree with that. If you have Vlad Tarasenko, Ryan O'Reilly, some of the other great players they have too, Colton Parayko, guys like that, I think the Blues should easily be a playoff team. I don't think they're going to be a powerhouse team and a true cup contender anymore, but I do think they are going to be right in the mix for the playoffs, but I have them finishing 7th. At 8th, I have the Minnesota Wild taking home the final spot in the Western Conference playoffs, finishing with 90 points. And Minnesota showed me a lot last year. I think they showed that they're a much more competitive team than people think. Now, I don't think they are going to have as good of a year as they had in the 2021 shortened season. But with that being said, I do still think they are going to be a playoff team. They gave Vegas everything they could handle right up until Game 7. And that really showed me that I think the Wild are starting to turn a corner. Not a powerhouse team by any stretch of the imagination, but they are a playoff team for me anyways. At number 9, I have the Calgary Flames finishing 9th with 88 points. For Calgary, they are what they are. I mean, they're a very mediocre team. They obviously lost a big piece of their team in Mark Giordano, a big piece of their leadership too. You can say what you want about him, oh, maybe he's in decline or whatever. I still think Giordano has some good years left in him. Not very many because he is up there in age, but at least this year anyways. And there's been a lot of talk that they're going to retool their core, that they're going to trade Sean Monahan or Johnny Gaudreau or Matthew Tkachuk. All those guys, their names have been out there a lot this offseason, but they're all still here, and let's see what they can do for Calgary. At number 10, I have the Dallas Stars finishing with 87 points. I just couldn't put them in the playoffs. I mean, there's something about them. They have a good team, but a lot of their guys are on the wrong side of 30. A lot of their best players, I should say, are on the wrong side of 30. They don't have a ton of offense. I mean, they seem to have trouble scoring every year. Maybe they can squeak in because the Western Conference is weak. But for myself, I don't have them as a playoff team this year. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about that. At number 11, I have the expansion Seattle Kraken finishing with 86 points. In Seattle, obviously, I don't think they're going to live up to what Vegas did in 2017-18. But hey, I still think they're going to have a pretty competitive team. They're going to be a tough out every night. They're definitely not going to be a doormat. The thing that concerns me about Seattle, though, is I don't think they're going to be able to overcome their lack of offensive depth. I think they have some good players like Jordan Eberle, Jaden Schwartz. They have a lot of good defensemen, but I don't really know if those guys are going to produce a ton of offense for them. And I don't think they have enough offensive support up front either. I have the LA Kings finishing at number 12 with 82 points. In LA, they're a young upstart team with a bright future, but I don't think this is the year they make the playoffs. Even though they brought in Philip Deneau, who's a very good shutdown centerman and can provide you with some decent offense as well, I still don't think it'll be enough to get them over the top. Finishing at 13th, I have the San Jose Sharks with 80 points. And San Jose, was kind of tough for me to put them that low. I know a lot of people think they're going to be even worse, but I don't. I personally think with the Sharks having, Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson, yeah, these guys maybe aren't what they used to be, but they're still very adequate players. Thomas Hertl, Timo Meier. There's a lot of skill on that Sharks roster, and it's kind of a shame to even have them that low, but I can't really see them finishing too much higher than that. At 14th, I have the Nashville Predators finishing with 76 points. And Nashville, even though they made the playoffs and had a very good series against the Carolina Hurricanes, against a very good Carolina team too, I might add, I don't think they're going to repeat that in a normal season, and I do see them being one of the worst teams in the Western Conference. At 15th, I have the Anaheim Ducks finishing with 70 points. Yes, the rebuild is on in Anaheim. It's in full swing here. And to be honest, I would have put them lower than 70 points if they didn't have John Gibson as their goalie. Some good young players coming in the pipeline, but it's tough to say if those young guys are going to be ready to contribute this year. And even if they are ready to play in the NHL, how big of an impact are they going to have on the Ducks roster? Is it going to be a big enough impact to make them overachieve, or are they just going to be good NHL players this year? And finishing last in the Western Conference, I have the Arizona Coyotes with 67 points. And Arizona, now that they move to the Central Division, they're going to be in tough even more than what they would have been in the Pacific Division. Had they stayed in the Pacific, I would have had them finishing with more points than that. Still definitely not a playoff team, but I think they would have had more than just 67 points. The Pacific, in my opinion, is the weakest division in hockey right now. Arizona Coyotes, unfortunately for them, they're not in the weakest division in the NHL right now. They're in one of the better divisions. The Central has a lot of good teams. I have 5 Central teams making it to the playoffs and only 3 Pacific. Arizona, much like Buffalo and Anaheim, they're in a rebuild for sure. And I think the best option for them is probably to not overachieve and finish near the bottom or at the bottom and pick up a good draft pick and get your team started off going in the right direction for next year and beyond that as well. That means the Buffalo Sabres will take home worst in the league, unfortunately for them, or maybe fortunately for them, depending on how you look at it. Obviously, there's no Jack Eichel for the Buffalo Sabres. He's on LTIR. They took the captaincy away from him too. But Buffalo, like I said, probably the worst team in the league for sure. And Arizona, they're going to be second worst, Anaheim third worst. So we'll see how the draft lottery shakes out for those teams. I think that is going to be the case for them. So there it is. Those are my thoughts on the Western Conference standings. Please let me know what you all think in the comment section down below. I'd also love to see how you guys think the Western Conference is going to shake out this year. Also, please like and subscribe and share this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you, and I'll talk to you again soon.